Hey guys, so it's about 11:47 a.m. Pacific time on Wednesday, or this Wednesday, November 5th, 2025. It's 63 degrees outside, 63 degrees outside under cloudy and semi-raining, partially raining skies. But with that said, before I get into the topic here, I'd like to ask you guys to do me a favor, and that is, of course, to like the video, ring the bell for notifications, subscribe to the channel, and share the video. Also, if you'd like to hear my content outside of YouTube, you can find me in other places, like where you listen to your favorite podcast. You can find me at places like iTunes, iHeartRadio, Pandora, Spotify, Audible, Amazon Music, and Radio Public, and to an extent SiriusXM. Wherever there's a podcast to be found, more than likely you'll find mine as well. Also, you can find me at other video uploading outlets like Rumble.com and VENMO.com, along with DailyMotion.com and Odyssey.com. The first two, Rumble and VENMO, you can find content identical to my YouTube channel, but some content that you won't find here on YouTube due to the fact that, well, the YT may not be too fond of it. But you can find it over at Rumble and VENMO. Also, I have a Patreon open if you want to help support there. That'd be greatly appreciated. I have a Venmo and a Cash App, so if you want to help there as well, that'd be greatly appreciated. You can also find me at DeviantArt.com at BVW1979. That's BVW1979 at DeviantArt. You can also find me at InkBunny.net at BWRosas. You can also follow me on Twitter, aka X.com, and Blue Sky and TikTok. You can find me there as well. And also, you can support me over at my two official stores as well. I have a Fourth Wall store and a Teespring store. The Fourth Wall store is the newest one. Got a couple of graphic tees there, two graphic tees I think you'll like, and some regular non-graphic items that I might have to, or probably will have to, edit and fix up later on to put some graphics on them too. But if you just want something that's non-graphic and just something like, let's say, for the winter or whatever, you can find stuff like that there. You can, and the link to the Fourth Wall store is at the top. And the OG Teespring store links are at the bottom to that. And you can basically get a lot of items there that you probably can't get anywhere else. So if you want to help out in those areas, be greatly appreciated. And also you can find me at twitch.tv, and I have a kick.com account. I haven't started that one yet, kind of put stuff on there yet, but eventually I will. Twitch.tv, of course. I have some stuff there, so check that out if you would like. But with that said, let's get to the topic at hand. And last night, for a majority of the country, we had a lot of elections. Now, for some parts of the country, mostly the eastern side of things, we had some governmental races, if you will. Basically, we had some new governors elected. We had some new governors. The one in Virginia apparently is a very interesting one in the eyes of a lot of folks because of who she's backed and what she's talked about. But the one in New Jersey seems like, yeah, she's also questionable, but it sounds like maybe she's willing to put any biasness that she has, aside to, work for make a better state, in the state of New Jersey to make it better and all that, with the help of the president and, his administration. But, that's what she's saying now, but we don't know if that's totally on the up and up. We do know that the Attorney General for Virginia is the individual that has come under a lot of fire and everything. And then, of course, the one race in New York, probably the most important mayoral race, probably in recent U.S. history, basically, got the result that, well, not many were very fond of, and not many were looking forward to happening and praying and it wouldn't happen. But as I've been told, God has a reason for a lot of stuff happening, and He obviously has a reason for this result in New York City, with their new mayor being elected last night and making history in a way by doing it by being the first immigrant to become mayor of NYC. Now, that's not the only election. That's not the only election that took place. Of course, across the country, there were other, elections, some special ones, due to not, not basically electing new officials or new mayors or governors or anything like that, but to basically vote on certain, I guess you could say, topics, certain agendas. And here in California, of course, Prop 50 was at the forefront. And much to the chagrin of people that didn't want it to happen, it has indeed happened. Basically Prop 50 got the votes needed to basically become official and be put into, I guess you could say, put into the work, if you will, to become a reality. Um, so yeah, not a lot of folks were happy about that, but there's a lot that were. And the way it sounds like, in my opinion, being, this listening to what people say here in California through the various newscasts, the way it sounds like to me is they probably weren't too thrilled about doing it. They probably didn't, want to do it, but because they have such a disdain for our current president, they have such a disdain, a distrust, a hatred, if you will, for our current president and the regime or the administration, I should say. Because they have, that feeling of distrust, disdain, and hatred, that basically they decided the lesser of, I guess in their opinions, their point of view is the lesser of two evils was to say yes to Prop 50 and basically give the Democratic Party, essentially five more districts, five more seats, maybe more so, depending on the situation. Now, of course, this was all done, as some people have pointed out, in retaliation to what Texas did not that long ago by basically redistricting certain parts of their state to be more Republican. And so basically, our governor here and his crew and those that basically um, felt, the same as he is or the same as he has, that some from his own Democratic Party all felt that, well, what Texas did makes things unfair, so you know what, we're going to balance it out by doing, the same thing here. And well, as of last night, that's exactly what has happened. But here's what's interesting, though. Here's what's interesting. There was reports going out, various newscasts and online sources have talked about this, that not only is the current administration that's running this country going to go to the higher courts, if you will, and basically see to the fact that this Prop 50, becomes, null and void, even though it was voted in. It's, what's crazy, what's even more interesting about that is not only is the current administration, depending on who you listen to, wanting to do that, but you also have Republicans, some Dems, and some Independents and Green Party members that, here in the state of California want to do the same thing. They want to basically take, the governor and his crew and those behind Prop 50, they want to take them to court because they feel it's unconstitutional. Like basically, hey, you don't really have a right to do this, in retaliation for something that was already done in another state, all because you want more, you want more power, you want more ground to be on your side. You want more property, basically, to be, at your disposal. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens there. It's going to be interesting to see what happens there. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people listening to this, or reading, listening to this, and I'll probably reading up on it. They'll probably the first thing that's going through their minds is, oh, that the courts are going to throw that out. It's a losing case for the Republicans here in the state, for the Republicans, Dems, and Indies, and Green Party members here in the state that opposed it. It's a losing battle for them. And oh, it's a losing battle for our current administration that's running the country. I'm sure a lot of people are thinking that, and maybe they're right. Maybe it is a losing battle, but you know, but here's the thing: we're not going to know, until it's all said and done. And as some people have said it, and this is true, this kind of stuff, even if it does finally become a reality, it may not become a reality, for another year or so, because this could drag on. This could drag on for the rest of this year into next year. It may not become a reality until this state has a new governor. And that's going to happen next year. That's going to happen next year because we are on the verge of either having, because I don't see no Democratic nominee or, person running, if you will, unless our current governor is going to go for one more term. But I don't see anybody, anybody, within that same party opposing the Republican candidate that's running for governor next year, as well as the Green Party candidate. I don't see anybody else that's getting some notoriety, getting some exposure. I don't see that. I don't see that opposition, if you will, from the Dems or the Ins, if you will. I don't see that, and it's very telling in that from that perspective. It's very telling, but yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. When the when the Republicans and some of their Democratic allies and independent Green Party allies take this to court to basically abolish it. It's going to be interesting that when they also have the administration that's mostly Republican with some Dems, Indies, and Greens, joining along with them to try to abolish this. It's going to be interesting to see what the result will be. The Supreme Court could either as some people are hoping, that they will, could just throw it out and say there's no reason for this to be at court. They have the right. They won fair and square. Or in some of the people's minds, hopefully, that oppose it are like, hoping that the Supreme Court I'm trying to find the right word to say, will look it over, trying to make sure that, there was no, shenanigans or anything put into it, and either decide that, hey, you only did this because you wanted to retaliate over what Texas did, so we're going to basically abolish it, or they're going to say, look, we're looking through it, everything seems on the up and up, and they might say, okay, fine, Prop 50 can go into effect, but maybe they'll put in a catch saying, however, you can't redistrict, too much. Maybe they'll say that, yeah, you can do some redistricting, but you can only do it in certain areas so that there's a balancing, not an unbalancing that's in the Democratic favor, but a balancing that's basically, kind of like 50-50, to where it's like, everybody has an equal piece, from the major party lines, kind of like, let's say a 45-50 or a 40-50, if you will, or 50-40, where in between the 5%, in between that, or the 2.5% each way in between that could go for the Indie and Green Party members, if that makes any sense. But the thing is, that could be the decision. That could be the decision that, yeah, it could go through, but it's got to be done this way. And if that's what happens, fine. They get a victory, but it's a bit of a sweet victory. Like, yeah, they can get they can redistrict, but they got to do it in a way that makes things fair. And maybe it won't be, and maybe it's not the fair way that they would expect, but at least it would, at least they get what they want. They kind of have that, I guess you could say, bittersweet, hollow victory, or whatever they want to call it. But it'll be interesting to see. It'll be interesting to see exactly what happens. But here's the thing. Here's the thing. California going through something like this, they're not the only state. There's a lot of states that are going to be doing this too, if not already. I mean, I'm sure Texas has already gone through these litigations and all that, which is why we haven't heard anything official of how things, what counties and all that of their state has been, redistrictized. It's because they're going through something similar, maybe currently as we speak, or on the verge of doing so, I should say. And then you have other states that might be doing the same things that are kind of like either 50-50 or more red than blue or whatever the case may be. They might be on the verge of doing that too. Basically, at the end of the day, no matter what state decides to redistrict to either, offset what happened here in California or to offset what happened in Texas and all that, no matter, which state does that, at the end of the day, they're all going to be going through the same situation that California is going to go through, that Texas, I'm sure, has gone through, and currently is probably going to go through, and that they're going to have to go to court. They're going to have to go to court to basically get this, officialized and everything, to see exactly, whether or not it can be made a reality or it's got to be null and void. And they just got to accept things as they are. Or if they do get it to happen, that they got to do it a certain way to where, yeah, they can redistrictize, but they can't make it, unbalanced. They got to keep it, fair and square. Like, it's got to be kind of like a 50-40 kind of deal with, 2/5, of that both ways, 2.50 of that both ways going to, being given to the Green Party and maybe given to the Independent Party. So to me, this is just a situation to where, victory is right now. Victory is, in the palm of our governor and his, his state administration's hands. It's in their hands and all that, but it could be easily taken away just as quickly if it's decided that this, wasn't the right thing to do. And apparently some people are pointing out, if you heard certain, outlets last night, there are certain people pointing out that this was done so quickly, they weren't given a chance to oppose it. Like, there wasn't any opportunity fairly to try to oppose, why this is not the right direction to do, or not the right decision to do. So again, so it's going to be interesting to see exactly what happens, going forward. It's going to be interesting to see what happens and all that. And, as far as the other elections across the country and other parts of the country go, let me put it to you like this. Everybody's worried about this new mayor and everything in NYC. And yeah, he's basically the mayor of one of the most popular, very, very popular cities in the world, right? He is now leading that city. Here's the problem, though. Just because he's leading the city as a mayor doesn't mean, it doesn't mean basically he's gonna have major influence like he has right now. Because basically he's talking a big game, now he's got to back it up. And if he doesn't back it up, then that means all he did was just manipulate those that he knew were going to listen to him so he can get into power. And if that happens, then basically those that voted him in are going to turn on him and they're going to ask for him to be removed. So he's got to back up what he says. He's got to back up what he says, and he's got to do it the day he's sworn in. Because if not, then it will just prove he lied to them. He manipulated them. Now, some people might say, well, it's just a mayoral race. It's no big deal, Well, here's the thing. When you have, cities like New York and Los Angeles and, wherever else, Las Vegas, per se, some of the more notable cities out there, when you have their mayoral races, basically, when you have those mayoral races, becoming a reality, basically coming into existence and all that, basically those become newsworthy because they're in these major media markets, and by being in these major media markets, it's going to get attention because a lot of people will tell you that whoever gets elected for mayor in LA, in Las Vegas, San Francisco, Dallas, you name it, Washington, DC, you name it, whoever gets voted as mayor, basically that's the first step for them to become the next governor. In other words, becoming mayor for their city is the first major step to becoming governor for their state, and then that's the next step after. And then after taking that step, then obviously the final step is to become president. Basically, it's all about taking the next step and all that to get to that inevitable goal. And a lot of people look at this race in NYC, and some might say it's not that big of a deal because it's just a mayoral race. They shouldn't make a big deal about it. The problem is, you know, basically depending on who you side with or who you believe with, you know, or who you believe and all that, who you side with, who you believe and all that, who you support. Basically, the issue is, people will look at this Mandani guy, who's the new mayor, who's going to be the mayor, who's the mayor-elect and everything, is going to officially be sworn in soon. They look at him, and the first thing that's going to go through a lot of experienced people's minds that, you know, do this political stuff for a living, newsworthy and projection-wise and all that, the first thing that's going to go through their minds is is because he got so much coverage and everything, and because of the way he's being presented, the way he presents himself and everything, and the way he kind of targets certain audiences and, you know, age groups and all that, people will project, those same people that project, hey, he's going to probably be the heavy favorite to win, which he did, they're going to project right now, even though they won't say it, that his next step will be to go for governor of New York. Everybody can see, you know, they can pretty much say that nobody needs a crystal ball to see that's going to be the next step. And that the next step after that, if he gets that, would be try to go for president. You know, again, it's a slow burning, it's a slow baby step, you know, process to get to that next, you know, to the next goal. You know, and that's why this was such a big deal. That's why you had certain Democrats, certain independents, Green Party members, and mostly Republicans not happy about this result, because they know as the years go by, you know, things are going to change even more and more. There's going to be more evolution, more progressions, sometimes in the right direction, not in the right direction, and mostly, and in this case, the confusing direction. They know that with the way things are changing constantly, year by year, month by month, if you will, that, you know, this guy here, you know, with the support he's gotten even from Washington, you know, this guy basically is just, you know, on the doorstep of becoming governor. Like this mayorship right now that he's going to have for what, the next 3-4 years? You know, this is just the first step to the governorship. And then that, if he gets that in the other people, in a lot of people's minds, then that would be the next step. You know, and then that, after accomplishing that goal, then he'd obviously be on the footsteps of being the next, you know, nominee, basically being the head of the Democratic Party. And a lot of people, even fellow Dems, don't want that. They don't want that because they don't know if this guy is going to be on the up and up. Like, yeah, he sounds like he has good intentions and all that, even though he's against a lot of other things the opposing party and his fellow Dems and independents and Green Party members, you know, support, even though he's against, you know, those things. You know, they're not sure if he's on the up and up and he means everything he says. You know, they're not sure. And a lot of folks are like, hey, we're getting, you know, and a lot of folks are saying already, we're going to get out of this city, we're going to go down to Florida and everything, or we're going to go down to Texas, even if we have to pay a tariff, because that's what Governor Abbott's saying he'll do. They're saying we'd rather live in those areas instead of living in NYC. Well, basically, yeah, this guy might be okay at first, but who's to say over time his true colors won't be seen? You know that's what they worry about. That's what they worry about. But guess what? At the end of the day, only God Almighty above knows the answer. And like I said earlier, and I've been taught before, and I'm sure a lot of you have, you know, I've been taught, you know, that God has a reason for everything. And he has a reason for this Mandani guy going in. And if the reason for this Mandani guy to go in is to actually be, you know, that one actually to be similar to Paul, you know, not Paul the disciples, but this other Paul that basically was, you know, in the Bible against Jesus, and then Jesus came to him, took his sight and everything, and basically asked him, why are you persecuted against me and all that? You know, God forgive me for wording that wrong if I did. But basically, God used that Paul, you know, that Saul, who became Paul, I should say, he used him to turn him around and become a speaker for him, become basically, someone that did his ministry and everything. So who's to say maybe this Mandani guy won't be used in that similar manner? We'll have to see. Maybe that's the reason God allowed it to happen. We don't know. We don't know, but we'll see. But at the end of the day, it's like they say in the Bible, not our will, but His will be done. So again, there's a reason for this. If there's a reason, again, if God has a reason for this, and He does, then we're just going to have to see what His plan, what role Madani has in His plans. We'll have to see whether it's a role that's going to turn Madani around in the eyes of a lot of folks and make him actually realize, hey, what we're doing, what my party is doing is stupid. We need to do what's right. We need to work with, the current administration to, get this country, get certain cities on track. Then so be it. But we'll see. We'll have to see what, takes place in the very near future. We'll have to see what takes place. But, yeah, at the end of the day, though, there's a reason. There's a reason a lot of things take place. There's a reason God allows these things to happen, and we're just going to have to see, why is He, we're just going to have to wait and see what part of His plan all these, decisions have in the future. But again, a lot of the decisions that were made weren't just, to vote people in office, if you will, but they were also done to make certain agendas either possible or not possible. And some of those agendas that became possible, well, now they're facing even more obstacles, apparently, to see whether or not they can go through. And if not, then it was a waste of time. And if they do, there's going to probably be a compromise and stuff that may be not favorable, maybe not favorable in the way certain parties wanted it to be, but if that's the way it's got to go for them to get what they want, then that's the way it's going to go. But that's all I can really say on it, guys. Let me know what your thoughts are down below in the comment section. If you didn't already, do so in the live chat. And until next time, guys, like I said at the beginning, like the video, ring the bell for notifications, subscribe to the channel, and share the video. And click on the links in the description to find my content elsewhere outside of YouTube and to support me outside of YouTube as well. But give me your thoughts, guys. What did you think about this election 2025? This election 2025 this year, if you will, the special elections and certain meritorial certain meritorial and governor elections. Let me know, and until next time, I will talk to you all later. But give me your thoughts. What do you think overall is going to happen with some of these props, 50s, and redistricting and all that? Let me know, and until next time, I am out.